Was it more? You guys don't remember Romper Room, do you?
I don't.
Vaguely,
That's
vaguely.
what Zoom reminds me of. I see Kenny, I see Barbie, I see Joey, I see Linda.
Are you ready to let the peanut gallery in?
Yep.
Here we go. Howdy, folks. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. Lovely to have you here this week again. We have a great guest for you today. We'll get started in a minute once people officially shuffle their feet into the Zoom room digitally. And yet again, we have sort of two special guests today. One is our special guest of the week, Dave Conte. Also, we have Morgan Cowell, who's taking on some host responsibilities here. And so for today's session, I'll kind of let the reins over to him and just kind of interject here and there for moral support and to guide things along. So looks like Carl's got a nice sandwich going. And Carl, I'm in your neighborhood. I forgot. Maybe we should hang out. I might hang out with Tanya Regier, maybe tomorrow or something. Maybe we can all get together. Okay, anyways, I'm gonna spotlight
Yeah, text me, man.
Okay, that sounds good. That sounds great. Cool. All right, I'm gonna spotlight the major players here, and I'll let Morgan take over for the intro.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather every Saturday to meet and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world. We talk to anyone and everyone worth talking to, and that includes manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, other instrument makers, and of course, all the piano techs, all with the goal of being better at our craft, to help one another, and to create an ever more musical world. This is brought to you by the Piano Technicians Master Classes, which is an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from the piano industry masters without leaving your home. Find out more on the website. And today's guest, we have Dave Conte. Let me pull up his bio here. You've been a player for a long time in this industry, haven't you?
About 30 years.
30 years. So his bio is very long, but I'm going to give you the short condensed version. He did his training at the University of North Texas College of Music. And in 2020, he accepted an offer from the University of Tennessee and is the resident piano technician there. But before that, he owned and operated a private tuning service for 28 years. He studied with Steinway, with Yamaha, at Baldwin, and you were also a dealer for Petroff and a Koch technician. I trained with Busendorfer, Seiler, Bechstein, Kwai. You have a whole list of artists that you tuned for and worked with. You are an RPT, and you are also an examiner too, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
That is correct.
And you became an instructor at the Tarrant, as I say it?
It's Tarrant County.
Okay. Which is developing the curriculum for the class he taught there. Are you still?
Yeah, that was Tarrant County College in Texas.
Okay. Great. Did I leave out anything important on your bio?
You covered it pretty well. Thank you. I did have a private academy as well. I was trying to give back what I was given. I was very well gifted with being able to go to North Texas, and so it's been my mission to try to give that back. So as a consequence of that, or as a benefit of that, University of
I think you're muted all of a sudden, Dave.
Yeah, somebody muted me. I guess I should take that as a sign. Stop talking.
That was an accident. Sorry.
So anyway, but the University of Tennessee, we've been talking about setting up a certificate program for piano technicians, which I would be teach based on the curriculums that I'm familiar with. Also, we're setting up an exam site at the University of Tennessee, and this is kind of all things that are in the works for me and for the community.
Great. Very good. Well, why don't we get it with your main presentation today? We're talking about ghosting let off, and we'll kind of let you take the reins. If anyone has any questions, why don't you throw them in the chat, and I will sort of interject with them as they come up. But take it away, Dave.
Okay, and it's good to see a lot of my colleagues here. Shout out to Carl and Jerry. I can't see everybody that's here, but I know I saw a few other familiar faces. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. So ghosting let off. It's going to be a little bit difficult to teach this without a piano. I'm sorry, I'm trying to rearrange my the tiles on my video here. There we go. Be a little bit difficult without a piano to demonstrate on, but I'll do my best to explain what I'm talking about. Probably everybody has the basic background to understand the things that I'll be talking about, but not hopefully the technique is going to be new to you, or if not, it will be somewhat supporting what you already know. So ghosting technique, quite simply, is getting the hammer to escape as close as possible to the string without interfering with the amplitude of the string, the envelope of amplitude. It's not only important as a factor of performance. Actually, I'm going to read a little bit of this, Morgan. If you could post the first page 1 for me.
Of course.
So you can read along. I'm not going to read this verbatim, but it might be helpful for you to have this in front of you. So it's not only is it important as a factor of action performance, but if done right, ghosting technique can help focus tone. And I think that's the major point that I'm trying to get to here, and maximize ring time. Of course, there are other factors that are influential here. The condition of the belly, condition of the bridges and strings, the action itself, the hammers, all of these will play. But assuming that we've got something at least decent to work with, this is a really big way to focus in at least one component of regulation. I have this whole concept came to me as a result of tuning a piano for a church customer. A piano, I got called because a tuner had just been there and done some work on the piano, but the bass in the piano suddenly got dead. So they called me in to see if I could diagnose what was happening. It was a Baldwin piano, a fairly new Baldwin. And at that time, I was the concert and artist technician for the South Central region. So I went, and it wasn't hard to figure out. I didn't feel blocking in the hammers through the key, but I could tell that the hammers were getting too close and weren't given the opportunity to escape that envelope of amplitude, the oscillations. So I had been in a training course for my concert certification with Baldwin. So I was kind of, I had a clue as to what was probably going on. And sure enough, that was exactly what was happening. So I did some let off regulation. Most of the rest of the piano was pretty good. It was a fairly new piano, but the technician, in his zeal to get better repetition out of the piano, actually made the whole situation a little bit worse. So by doing a few adjustments, by using this technique, I was able to improve it and resolve the problems and get it to open up. The whole piano just opened up. So I want to address a few myths. Closer let off increases volumes. Closer let off increases repetition speed. These are the two factors I think the other technician was trying to improve. Heavier hammers increase volume, heavier hammers increase speed. The weight of the hammers doesn't really have an impact on either volume or speed. And gravity doesn't have any effect on let off. Influential factors that we encounter: inertia, the tension. Both of the people understand tension of the hammers. I think a lot of technicians understand the tension the tension of the strings, most technicians understand, but the tension of the hammers, some technicians understand, but it's an unknown concept to other technicians. There's actually a lot of tension in the hammer itself, and this comes into play in let off as well. Think about a tennis ball hitting a racket. There's a compression of the tennis ball. There's a compression of the strings on the racket. They both bend, both meet each other and force each other into each other and then repel each other. And this is one of the concepts I'm taking advantage of, I guess leveraging as a part of the ghosting technique. Think about let off as a balancing act. All the factors we encounter in regulation are a balancing act. We have a lot of materials that give us specifications, but if you talk to an experienced technician, he'll tell you that you can't ever get a piano to regulate exactly to the specifications that are published. There's always a deviation. If you try to screw them into or nail them down to the specifications in a book, it ain't going to work. You have to let the piano tell you what that piano wants. That's another concept that I learned from Baldwin. So regulation is really a balancing act, and let off is just one component of that regulation. You have to get a balance between all the forces: the velocity, the forces acting on the string and the hammer. And ghosting is a very precise way to dial in this. Again, if it's done right, you'll be amazed at how much the piano just opens up. Ring time is improved and tone is focused. Can you scroll down a little bit on that, or reduce the size? So let's go to figure 8.8 on the next page. So again, thinking about the tennis racket and the tennis ball. So they're both flexing. How does this affect let off? Well, the hammer is going to push up on the string, and it needs to rebound before the propagation of the wave is established in the string. It takes a couple of milliseconds for that to happen. I think I determined it here. I found a source that calculated it to be 0.2 milliseconds at C4. And that's under the next diagram there. So can we go back to the page 2? So the hammer must be leaving the string before the string has started into the second half of its oscillation. It goes up in the apex and comes down in the antinode of its oscillation. The hammer needs to escape that envelope before it goes into gets fully into the downward oscillation, or there will be interference. And that's what I found with the bass section in this subject piano. The wider the oscillations, like with the bass strings, have pretty huge oscillations. Up in the high treble, they're almost indiscernible. So by definition, let off is going to be a lot wider down at A0 than it is at C8. So you have to let the strings tell you where that envelope is. What is the minimal amount that you can get close to the strings, the minimum space that you can have between the string and the hammer. Most of the sources that we have for technical specifications give very general specs on this, that it's somewhere around 1/8 of an inch on an upright piano and 1/16 of an inch on a grand piano. Well, if you try to make all the notes in the bass strings, especially on a concert grand, let off at 1/8 of an inch, you're going to have interference. I mean, 1/16 of an inch, you're going to have interference. It's probably going to be closer to 3/30 seconds, maybe even a little bit more. And up in the high treble, you're going to get the hammers to almost block before you get interference. But there's still a ghost, and that's where this term comes from, a ghost of space that has to be there, even when the hammer is not encountering the envelope of oscillation. And I think it has something to do with, you won't find this in any of the handout or the text today, but I think it has to do with air moving between the hammer and the string. As much as that seems it's insignificant, I think there's still something to it. When I did some training with Shigeru Kawai, one of the things they showed me, they demonstrated, was the angle of the back check. Even though there's no difference in the hammer or the space, the angle of the back check made a significant change in the tone that was coming out of each note, how bright it was, how full it was. I don't know why that happens, because it happens after the hammer is already traveling away from the strings. But it was unmistakable. And I think that there is the same principle exists with hammers, even when they're not touching the string at any time after they escape. In other words, they're not being interfered with by the string. The string is not being interfered with by the hammer. There is something there's a limit to how close the escapement can be to have a healthy tone. So, but getting back to the explanation that I'm outlining here, if you interfere with the string, if the string is interfered with by the hammer before it escapes the vibration of the string, there's going to be a consequence. So in the example that I gave, the wave propagation was fast enough that the string was trying to move into the deflection before the hammer could actually escape. If you'll go to page 3, you can see it in the first diagram there. And I've lost the figure number. It's figure 8.6. This is a graphic explanation of how much compression there is in the hammer. So you're having this moment of where the hammer is compressing and the string is deflecting before they get away from each other. And if the hammer is propelled before it escapes too close to the string, you're going to have this interference. So you've got to account for not only the motion of the hammer, but the compression of the hammer and the bending of the wire. So as I said, this was calculated at 2 milliseconds before this happened, before the wave propagation is set up in the wire. And it happens really fast. You think that wave is traveling from the hammer. The string is going up. It's traveling back to the bridge and reflecting back to the hammer and back to the front termination, and from the hammer to the front termination and going to the back. And all of this is happening within 0.2 milliseconds. It's 0.2 of a millisecond. It's very fast. And the hammer, I guess, they've done some studies that have measured the hammer velocity, and I think the fastest that a concert hammer will move is about 90 miles an hour, and I think that's way slower than 2 milliseconds. Was there a question there?
I don't have chat pulled up because I'm full screen with this document.
Okay. So yeah, I do have a question here. I wonder if the hammer felt absorbs the vibrations from the air, even if it's not touching. I think that's kind of what what Shigeru Kawai was trying to get at. And I think that may be the reason that the tone changes, is that the hammer may be absorbing some of the air around it. That's a very good observation, Josh. Is ghosting let off a concept or a technique? Well, I think there's a chicken and an egg question. One, I don't think is exclusive of the other. Good question, though, John. Thank you. So where was I? Ask an old guy a question and you're sure to get him off track in a hurry. Again, and this is going the wave propagation, the let off allowance, all of these things are going to vary greatly from piano to piano, even from one size of piano in one brand to another. It depends on the scaling, string tensions. Higher string tension is going to set up a lot more quickly than a lower tension piano. So I know there's really not that much difference between a Steinway and a low tension Yamaha, but there is some difference. And this all has to be, we're not going to sit down and calculate all of this stuff. There's just too much to it. But knowing a lot of this stuff will be helpful for you to understand what's actually happening and how to get to where you want to be. Okay, can we go to, actually, yeah, let's just stay at this slide for a minute. Yeah, right there. So this is a graphical illustration of the time that the hammer is actually in contact with the string. And again, here, 2TH, that represents 2 milliseconds. I'm sorry, 0.2 milliseconds. So this string is already set into motion within the first millisecond. The first tenth of a millisecond, the second tenth of a millisecond it's moving back, has already gone to its 0 point and is moving in a downward direction. Okay, I think I'm done with that one now. Let's move on to page 4. And please, I don't want this to just be a dictation. If you've got questions, I don't want to be inundated, but please feel free to ask questions if you have them. So let's put this all together and see what's happening. Figure 17.4 below shows the string near the high point of the deflection. We have to assume some compression of the hammer here, though it's not shown. It also shows a graph of the motion of the hammer from rest position through the contact with C, peak deflection. They missed letter B. I couldn't find a letter B letter B is just a halfway point between A and C. Peak deflection of and disengagement from the string and into check. Now, I do want to mention at this point that ghosting let-off can also aid in checking. So checking should be regulated again after this is done, and you'll find that it's probably changed a little bit. And so it's going to help your regulation after the hammer engages the string. The dotted straight line is the string at rest, and the dotted line indicates the hammer motion to continue with the oscillation with the string if the string and hammer got fused. Now, why they put this in the diagram, I don't know. So it's best we should just ignore it. But they put it in the diagram, and I used the diagram when I gave the author credit for this. So I'm not purging, I'm not committing, what do they call it when you steal something from an author? Anybody got the answer to that?
Plagiarism.
Plagiarism, that's the, I knew it began with a P. Yeah. So I'm not plagiarizing myself. Anyway, so as best we probably never saw this part of the figure. The strike point, distance h, is a significant part of the scale and will influence let-off timing if it varies greatly. What I'm talking about is the strike point. In the middle of the piano, this is calculated, or I think designed is a better way to describe it, at about 1/9 of the scale, 1/9 of the speaking length of the string, in other words. It's a little bit more than that, and up in the high treble is way less than that. It's probably a 64th of the string length in the high treble, but I think it averages out to be 1/9 of the speaking length. So that's where I got that number from. So all you technical geeks, don't catch me on that one. It's just an average. An acoustical reason for this is that the hammer blow is an evenly divisional proportion of the string and the reasons that is calculated this way is it will defeat the nodes of the string and the overtones at the nodes 4, 8, 12, and evenly divisible factors. So it's generally set at something that's not divisible by 2, 1/9, 1/7, 1/11, 1/33. You can see where I'm going with this. So from a mechanical standpoint, a contact at any point on the string will have a spring effect from the shorter segment of the complement of the total length of the string, where in this example, from 1/9 of the spring effect shorter segment would be 8 times that of the longer portion of the string, thus only requiring the string and consequently the hammer to travel a quarter of the distance to gain reflection. In this way, the string aids the hammer to accelerate away into check. And that's what I was just talking about. Check should be done after the ghosting technique, if you choose to do it, is completed. Now, I want to stop here and explain. This is not an end-all and be-all. You should use discretion when using this technique. A Yamaha teaches the best average, the best safety zone, and I agree with that in a lot of circumstances. I happen to work at a university that has very good climate control. I've got almost all new Steinway pianos. You guys are drooling now over what the situation I've got. But not to brag, but it just to demonstrate that you have to take into consideration the piano that you're working with. This isn't going to work that well on an old piano with a lot of grooves in the hammers. Even if you file them off, it's going to change the geometry of everything. You can't do it on a very low quality piano very well. You're going to run into a lot of problems if the humidity changes. If you try to make every piano fit into this box, they're going to start to be square pegs. So use this with discretion. But if you can use this, if you have a situation where you've got a nice piano in a pretty well regulated house or in a pretty well regulated performance venue somewhere, and I'm not talking about the bar down the street with the old beat up upright. This technique cannot be applied to an upright. It can't be done. But if you can use this technique, it'll make you a hero, because I tell you, this really brings out the most, at least from this from the perspective of let off, escapement, the most that you can get out of the piano. Things will open up. You'll be able to hear the overtones for tuning that much better. And if you've got a piano that has some shortcomings, if you get a good regulation, if you get good level strings, doing this will really make you a hero, and you'll have that customer for life, because you'll do something no other technician's been able to do, or probably not been able to do before you. So now the caveats. Again, some additional caveats. The piano must have a sostenuto, which is well regulated. You'll need that sostenuto. I did not attempt. I don't understand that question. I've used on pianos with my clients. Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that, Forrest. I'm responding to Forrest's question in chat. So if you are wondering what I'm talking about, just pull up his comments. I have used this on pianos, and my clients think I am a genius. I did not attempt the explanation. It's not necessary that you attempt the explanation. We're drilling into it a lot deeper than you will ever need to share with your clients. All they need to know is that you improve the piano. I didn't tell my church client what I did. If I had, I would have just seen their eyes glaze over. Remember that most piano owners, while they think they know, especially if they're good players, they think they know a lot about pianos. bless their hearts, they just don't. They don't understand, most of them, unless they're technicians or have had some training. They don't understand what we do. They will have to be pretty sophisticated to understand this. So don't bother. Don't give them more than they can chew. So anyway, getting back to what we need in the piano. So you have to have a good functioning sostenuto, because you're going to have to use that. You can't use the damper pedal for this. You just won't be able to hear, once you get enough of the notes excited, what you need to hear on this one individual note that you're working on. The action must be firmly bedded. That's a good starting point for any regulation. And you can't do this because everything's going to be moving. Even if the rest of the regulation was done fairly well, it was done in error because it wasn't bedded well. And the action's going to be moving, and you'll be trying to hit a moving target. You won't be able to get this to work. The strike point must be optimized. Maybe we could cover that in a future class if anybody doesn't know how to do that. The best thing that I can suggest on finding a good strike point is, don't use note 88. Use some note between 78 and 80 to get your strike point. Anything above that is a wish that the factory did a good job, but use some note in the mid-high treble around 80 to find your strike point. Slide the action in and out, keep playing the note until you get the best projection on that note. The unisons, and I should have put this earlier in the list, unisons must be clean with no significant open strings. If you don't yet know what open strings are, all three strings should be on a level plane where the hammer encounters them at exactly the same point. If you press the hammer, block the hammer up against in a trichord against the three strings, and one of them rings when you pluck it, that's an open string. They need to be level. It's going to mislead you. It's going to tease you into thinking you've got good let off when you don't, if one or more of the strings are open. The action must be well regulated, of course. You want everything to happen, everything else in the regulation to happen at a good moment. The hammers must be clean. Again, this can't be done on a hammers with deep grooves. And well spaced. And I should add, they should be square to the strings as well. They should be well traveled, but I don't think that's going to have that much impact. If they're really wildly traveling to the left or right, that probably will have, but if they're just traveling a little bit off, it won't have that much impact on ghosting. Leveling strings would have more impact, and square at hammers would have more impact. So the procedure: remove the fall board. You're going to have to put your hands into the action cavity. So when you remove the fall boards, make sure you put the cheek box back in place. Strike the note. I think I got my procedure a little bit out of order here. I'm going to improve it verbally. Press the key and then depress the damper pedal. Then you can release the key and restrike it with force. You want to get that string moving and then press it again. Let me back up. You're pressing the key initially to find out which to lift the damper so that the sostenuto can engage it. Then you're playing the note with force. Then you're playing the note again rapidly, but not with enough force to play it again. You want to get the hammer up to the string as quickly as you can without actually playing the note. This takes a lot of practice. I don't have a piano here to explain it. Unfortunately, this is a Zoom call, and I don't have a grand piano in my house, so you'll have to take my word for that. But you would play the note as hard as you can, get it moving, then play the note again without actually playing the note, but you want to get the hammer up to the string as quickly as you can so that it would encounter any interference that let off being too close would introduce. You will find out when you're at the right place, when you play the note, and you'll have to practice this. When you play the note and get it up to the string quickly, and you don't hear a zing or you don't feel the string kick back the hammer in its motion. This is number 4. If there is no zing or bobbling of the hammer, move the let off closer until you encounter some. Then you know you're too close and you want to get it just outside that zone where you're getting interference from the string. Again, up in the high treble, you can't let the string tell you this. There's not enough, a wide enough oscillation of the string. You have to block the string and listen. And this is important. Listen for the tone when it all comes together, when it all seems to lift out of the piano. That's the only way you're going to tell when the ghosting is, when the let off is at the right point. And this is true with every note on the piano. You'll be able to tell by the sound of the note when it's in its Goldilocks zone. I like that term. When it seems just right, just the sweet spot. When you hear, wow, it changed just a little bit, but that was the perfect place. If I move it any closer, I don't get that. If I move it a little bit farther away, I don't get that. So I want to get it right at the spot where I'm hearing it almost lift out of the piano. Yeah, I met Bill Garlick once. I didn't learn this from him. I learned this from Andrei Svetlichny, who was the Baldwin CNA guru. See, you ask a guy a question, old guy, blonde, a question, and you get him off track. So move to the next note and repeat this procedure. Continue through the scale from 1 to 88. Stop at note 88. Practice, practice, practice. Your hands and your ears will be your best teacher on this. If you understand the concept, you can do this. I can't demonstrate how to strike the key and get that note to repeat. Hopefully I've explained it well enough that you get the concept. You can play around with it until oh yeah, this is what Dave was talking about. I got to get the hammer up to the string quickly, but I can't do it hard enough to actually play the note again. So, questions?
On number 4, actually, the zing makes sense because you're going to be hitting the string, but the bobbling of the hammer, why are you looking for that? And how would that correspond with how close you are to the string?
Well, in the bass, the strings will actually kick the hammer away. You can feel it. When you get it up there, it'll actually knock the hammer back out of its oscillation. As the strings have a smaller and smaller envelope of oscillation, you'll just see the hammer bobbles, kind of like when you don't have deep enough aftertouch
Okay, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah.
But okay, that makes sense.
Very similar. It's hard to tell the difference when you get high enough up into the scale. It could be aftertouch, and you'll have to check that. But in the bass, you can actually feel that if you press the key and press it again, the hammer goes up, it'll actually kick the hammer away from the string. You can feel it. Yes, you can have drop. Well, I don't think the drop being too low would affect this. Drop being too high would affect it, because then you wouldn't know if it was actually drop, I don't know if you were actually even escaping. You can get drop above the let off, and you can get fooled by that. That was the answer to another question in chat.
We have a question from Alan.
Yes.
Hi, Dave. Nice to see you. I'm in a place with terrible lighting, or I would reveal my angelic appearance to you. But I had a question about something that appeared in the document earlier on. If I remember correctly, you said having closer let off does not increase volume. I am under the impression, and not from things I've heard from some guy, but from my own experience, I'm under the impression that having let off as close as is practically possible, which is what you're after here with this ghosting technique, gives greater control at both ends of the dynamic range, which means it's a fantastic thing to do, because usually when we do things to pianos, it'll extend the pianissimo or extend the fortissimo, but this does both. I can't prove that other than what I've heard and what my colleagues have heard when we've taken a piano with let up that was far away and done only that to the regulation, nothing else. First of all, do I understand